So Tna Impact took place once again from Orlando, Florida. The show starts with Dixie Carter in the ring. She says that she's not going to waste additional time discussing AJ Styles. She holds up Styles' one-night contract and tells him to come out and sign it so that she can put her unpleasant experience with him in the rear. So, Styles comes to the ring. Styles is about to speak, but Dixie tells him to keep his mouth shut and sign the contract. She tells him that the contract is only for his match against Magnus for the Undisputed Championship, and that because she has sacrificed plenty to both men to make the match happen, she adds that there will be a no disqualification stipulation. Dixie says that she wants that because she wants her last sight of Styles to be him beaten to a pulp and in an ambulance. She shoves the contract into his chest and tells him to sign it, but Styles flicks it away. He tells her that he loves the blood talk and reminds her that her faith in Magnus is the same faith that she had in Bully Ray before Bound for Glory. Styles tells Dixie that she'll never understand and that an undisputed champion means no more of her gimmick bullshit. He takes the contract, but before he signs it, he tells her that if the no disqualification rule means that her heels are going to get involved in the match, his boys will back him up. Dixie tells him that she allowed him to make a living and support his family, not his friends. She says that Styles' allies won't assist him because they're her property. Dixie tells him that she built the house that is AJ Styles and that she'll tear it down. Styles says that if her plan is to see him mentally collapse the way Jeff Hardy did, then she knows nothing about the business. He tells her that wrestling is about proving who the better man is, something that she doesn't comprehend. Styles says that the belt became more meaningful when he left the company and that Magnus would know that if he wasn't up her ass. Then Magnus comes to the ring. He tells Dixie to get out and she does. Magnus tells Styles that he will no longer refer to him as a fake champion and that his time in TNA has ended. He says that Styles chose to leave the company and only returned because he was no longer getting any run. Magnus says that he will terminate Styles' tenure and stand as the rightful champion. He leaves. However, Styles tells him not to leave yet. He signs the contract and throws it at Magnus. Styles tells him that he got to where he is by doing work and not having to cheat, and that he will walk out of the building with the positive traits that one should have to be the world champion. He ends it by saying that Magnus should ask Dixie about Plan B if Styles wins, but before he does that, he should remove his mouth from Dixie's ass. It was a decent segment, but it revealed two things. When the words "no disqualification" were uttered, that ensured that the match would become a fuckfest. When Styles mentioned that he would counter Dixie's heels interfering with his friends coming to help, that ensured that the match would become a fuckfest. So the highly anticipated wrestling match that many fans were looking forward to vanished at that point. So then we see Dixie backstage with Gail Kim and Lady Tapa. Dixie asks both of them if they get the significance of whatever they're supposed to be doing, and they both do. Dixie leaves and Gail makes sure that Tapa knows what to do. So then we had a non-title match. The Glorified Jobbers versus Eric Young and Dumbass Joseph Park. And during the match, we see ODB attacked by Lady Tapa backstage as Gail barks out orders. Young runs to the back and leaves Park alone to face Robbie E. and Mr. Duh. Terrible match. The winners of the match, the Glorified Jobbers. After the match, the jobbers rip out part of the guardrail and they do their finishing maneuver on Park and drive him to the mat on the guardrail. Who cares? So then we see Dixie Carter backstage with Samoa Joe. Joe tells Dixie that he wants to know that he wants her to know that he and the rest of AJ Styles' buddies are ready to help him if needed. He tells her that he will be the first line of defense for any attempt to cause interference. Dixie says that she can tear down Joe's house since she built it, and adds that he should be more concerned with his match against Ethan Carter III. Joe tells her that if Ethan gets beaten up badly, it will be her fault, not his. So then we see dumbass Joseph Park getting medical attention, and then we see Sting watching Eric Young take ODB to the hospital, and then realizing that Dixie is responsible. So then we see James Storm in the ring. Storm says that he has some things to discuss with Gunner. He calls him out, and Gunner comes to the ring. Storm says that he has been a member of some of the best tag teams in wrestling, and that in order to be that successful, you can't be selfish. He says that if having a lot of self-importance means talking the way he does and having the fans chant his name, he'll take it. Storm says that the world title breaks up tag teams as it did with his previous tag teams, and that Gunner is allowing his world title briefcase to get between them. Gunner acknowledges that he did what he did to Storm because the reward was there and that each man had to watch out over his own cause. He says that Storm gave him the super kick only because Kurt Angle was his partner. Storm says that Gunner should face him in a match with the world title briefcase on the line as it hangs from a pole. He adds that Gunner can't beat him a second time, and Gunner shakes his hand, accepting the match. This was a decent segment, but this match at Genesis needs to definitively produce a specific face and a specific heel because this vagueness has gone on too long. I still don't get why the world title shot briefcase has to be involved in this because it defeats the purpose of having the Feast or Fired match in the first place. But if this is the only motivational piece that they have to bring interest to this program, then that's all they can do. So then we see Ethan Carter III attacking Samoa Joe backstage. The action moves from the back to the ring, and the ref rings the bell, which leads to Samoa Joe versus Ethan Carter III. This really wasn't much of a match. When Joe tried to execute the muscle buster on Ethan, Rockstar Dud came out to grab Joe's leg. Joe goes after Dud, and then Ethan hits him from behind with a toy wrench. A wrench. Then Ethan hits Joe's injured knee with it, and the match ends in a no contest. So it's interesting to see that Ethan avoids any physical confrontation with Sting, but has no issue mixing it up with Samoa Joe. Speaking of Joe, hopefully this will lead to a revenge program against Ethan later, because Joe needs to start the year doing something substantial instead of doing nothing. So then we see Jeremy Borash with Kurt Angle. Angle says that the best way for him to prepare for his cage match next week against Robert Roode at Genesis is to issue an open challenge to anyone to have a match against him in a cage. He says that the person that accepts might as well be Roode because that is the only person he will see. Despite how meaningless cage matches are today, I could understand the concept of this if Angle had never been in a cage match. But since he has been in cage matches before, why would he need to be in one in order to prepare for one against Roode? Pointless. So then we see Samoa Joe backstage with someone from medical personnel, and he is resisting a trip to the hospital, but the Medi tells him that he has to go. So then we see James Storm and Gunner laid out on the floor backstage as paramedics attend to them. Sting is pacing back and forth, screaming Dixie's name. He walks out the doors and sees Dixie conveniently standing there. Sting confronts her and blames her for all the faces being taken out, and she denies it, and the rest of the segment was just bad theater. So then we see Kurt Angle come to the ring. He gets in the cage and waits for the opponent whom will answer his challenge. Robert Roode comes out, and Kurt Angle has this slight smirk on his face. Roode says that next week he will prove that he is the better man and will eliminate Angle's Hall of Fame opportunity. He gives the impression that he's going to accept Angle's challenge, but then tells Angle that he's not going to do it. He says that he has found people who will do it, and calls out Christopher Daniels and Kazarian. So we have a handicap steel cage match, Kurt Angle versus Bad Influence. Solid match. The match ends with Angle delivering a double German to Daniels. As he goes for the triple, Kazarian comes at him and Angle double Germans him. Angle makes an attempt to complete the triple on Kazarian when Daniels grabs his hands. Kazarian throws an elbow to Angle's face, which staggers him. Daniels charges toward Angle, but he responds with an overhead belly to belly. Kazarian throws a punch, but Angle ducks and Germans him. Angle attempts to execute the Angle slam on Daniels, but Kazarian hits him from behind. Daniels and Kazarian whip Angle into the corner. Then Kazarian whips Daniels toward Angle. However, Angle sidesteps him and Daniels hits the corner hard. Angle charges Kazarian toward the corner, but Kazarian puts a boot to Angle's face. Kazarian goes to the top rope in an attempt to climb out of the cage, and Angle goes up after him. After two attempts by Kazarian to hold on to the cage, Angle delivers an over-the-head German that causes Kazarian to collide with Daniels. He throws Daniels into the side of the cage and finishes off Kazarian with an Angle slam for the 3. The winner of the match, Kurt Angle. And the burial of Bad Influence continues. So then we see Dixie Carter backstage, telling her crew to not take down the cage. Robert Roode walks in and Dixie asks him if he's prepared to go at Angle in the cage now. Roode says that he's not getting in there with Angle, and Dixie tells him that he will be in there against Sting. Roode overreacts, but Dixie tells him that if he does it, he will be rewarded for it. So then we see Kurt Angle taking photos with a family outside the facility. Al Snow pulls up in a car, tells Angle that there is an emergency and that Angle has to come with him now, pointing out that he'll explain as he's driving. So Angle is just going to leave without finding out the emergency first. Just get in the car. So then we had another steel cage match. Robert Roode versus Sting. Decent match. The match ends with Sting hitting Roode with the Stinger Splash. He backs away and nails Roode with another one. Sting kicks Roode's leg from under him, sending him down to the mat. Sting tries to apply the Scorpion Deathlock, but Roode rakes the eyes. Roode picks Sting up in a fireman's carry position, but Sting escapes the hold and delivers a Scorpion Death Drop. He follows that with the Scorpion Deathlock on Roode. Ethan Carter III and Rockstar Dud come running to the ring. Ethan climbs the cage as Dud goes to the other side. As Sting is preoccupied with Ethan, Dud throws a baton to Roode. As the ref's back is turned, Roode hits Sting in the midsection and across the back with the baton. Roode gets rid of the weapon and goes out the cage door. The winner of the match, Robert Roode. I don't know why there was a need to create a distraction in order to sneak a weapon into a cage match since there is no disqualification. But the continuous decreasing of the meaning of having a cage match is killing the excitement for it. Once again, Sting is incapable of applying his finisher convincingly. He absolutely cannot do this against Ethan at Genesis. So then we see Mr. Anderson going into a funeral home. He sees Bully Ray sitting in the back pew and tells him that they can finish their beef right now. Bully Ray says that he knew Anderson would find him because they know each other so well. He says that if things were settled, they would have remained that way. Bully Ray says that it would have been too merciful for him to allow that. Anderson takes a step toward him, and Bully Ray tells him that if he continues further, he will burn him. Bully Ray says that Anderson cost him everything and that he wants the way he feels to affect Anderson for the rest of his life. He says that it will be over for Anderson at Genesis. Bully Ray says that Anderson placed his Aces and Eights vest in the coffin and tells him to look in it and see what he left for him. Anderson backs up to the coffin as he keeps his eyes on Bully Ray. He takes out a pair of baby blankets that are supposedly symbolic of his wife's expectant twins. Anderson sees that Bully Ray is gone. This was fine, but that music is taking away for what is supposed to be a serious storyline. Bully Ray has never needed any supplemental aid to get his point across, so he doesn't need it now. So then we see Dixie Carter again backstage. Sting bursts in and says that no weapon is going to keep him from having AJ Styles' back. Dixie tells him that it's time to talk about his contract and hints about giving him more money. But Sting tells her that cash won't get him. She says that Styles would never do the same for him and that he needs to decide whether he will be on her side or not. More pseudo soap opera bullshit. So then we have the unification match for the undisputed World Heavyweight Championship. Magnus versus AJ Styles. As predicted, it was a fuck fest, and there's no point in even discussing this. The winner of the match, Magnus. He is the undisputed World Heavyweight Champion. Show ends. Magnus is the undisputed champion, but initially he doesn't feel like one. Last week he stated how important it was to defeat AJ Styles on his own so that his title reign would have worth. What he said last week was completely negated as TNA chose not to allow him to do what he needed to do to establish himself as a credible champion at the beginning of his tenure. This failure is part of a larger problem. This company has no direction. The championships have no real meaning. Prominent wrestlers are being booked improperly, if at all. The president is clueless, and the creative team doesn't get it. TNA is a ship drifting in the middle of the ocean with no rudder to steer it. And the water is starting to fill the ship. I'm Tazmart 2002, and that was my TNA Impact Analysis for January 9th, 2014. If you're listening to me on YouTube, please leave your comments below. Click the like or dislike button. And if you subscribe, I would really appreciate it. If you're listening to me on the Wrestling News Talk Facebook page, you can leave your comments below and click the like button if you like what I've been saying. If you have any questions or comments for me about TNA or wrestling in general, you can get at me on Twitter, Tazmart2002, that's TAZMARK2002. And if your comments exceed the 140, get at me with an email, Tazmart2002@gmail.com. And be sure to listen to the TNA Impact review that I do with Chuck P, live every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on Chuck P's YouTube channel. Next time, Carl Cleveland will be joining us, and we'll be giving our takes on Part 1 of Genesis. Also, check out both Chuck P and Carl Cleveland's channels as well. Terrible show. The second one in 3 weeks. A night that should have been about AJ Styles and Magnus ended up being about Dixie Carter. AJ Styles deserved better than this. Naturally, TNA could not promote this show as being Styles' final match. But they knew that we knew that it would be. Even those that claim that they don't read the spoilers knew that it was Styles' final match. The foundation of TNA for the last 11 years deserved an exit that should have been satisfying for him as well as the fans. Did his match with Magnus have to be the proverbial 5-star match? No. But it should have been a match that surpassed the Bound for Glory series final match, and that would have reflected his commitment to a company that he has been with since the beginning. Yes. With AJ Styles presumably gone for good from TNA, the company clearly wants Dixie Carter to be their new foundation. Does that sound like a house you would like to live in? I'm Tazmark 2002. Gone.